Hello, everybody. We're going to give people about another minute or so to get on as I'm just a little bit early. I do want to give a shout out to all of these students who participated, helped with, worked on, and performed in the musical of The Jungle Book that went this weekend. My kids went and saw it, obviously, because and they are actually downstairs right now acting out as much of it as they can remember. So, positive impression made. They really, really enjoyed it. It was a good production. I'll give people. It is 6:30 now. I'm going to get started just for the sake of time. I'm going to try to keep this pretty brief. I want to keep it fairly focused. Hopefully, we'll keep it short enough that you feel like you can watch it again tomorrow night and before the test on Tuesday. So, our test on Tuesday covers four major topics. You have the presidency of James Madison, the War of 1812, the presidency of James Monroe, and the Industrial Revolution. But that really makes it sound like it's a pretty simple test when there's a lot of information kind of crammed into that. I was going making notes for today, and I made 6 pages, just boiling it down as much as I could to what I thought you absolutely needed to know for the test. So first of all, we want to start with a timeline that takes us from kind of one side of this test to the other. Now, going back just a little bit in time, 1787 is a hot date. That's when we write the Constitution. Then we get George Washington as president, then John Adams, then Thomas Jefferson, who makes the Louisiana Purchase, the 1803. That is also a hot date. And then you have Madison is our fourth president, and it's War of 1812 happens while he's president. And then Monroe and the Monroe Doctrine happens while he's president. So kind of, I've told you all along that you don't need to memorize the dates of the presidents, but you do need to know the order and kind of the major things that happened during their presidency. So that if you get a timeline question, it's not going to ask you for dates. It's going to ask you, put these events in order. And it's going to be one thing from Monroe, one thing from Madison, one thing from Jefferson, one thing from George Washington. And so you have to make sure you put those items, be able to put them in order. Okay, obviously Washington was first, Jefferson was second, Jefferson was third president, Madison was the fourth president, and Monroe is the fifth president. So you put those in order, and that will help you. Okay. So James Madison, the only thing we talked about with James Madison's presidency is the War of 1812. So we're going to focus pretty heavily on that. So impressment, that's a definition word you need to know for this test. Impressment is the forcing of sailors into military service. So we say, like, it sounds like it's going to be a good thing, but it's actually a bad thing. You're pressing them, like pressing them into service, forcing them into military service. All right. So I actually have there's really kind of two major, we've talked about four causes of the American Revolution. I'm sorry, four causes of the War of 1812. I'm trying to boil them down to two: impressment and blockades. So impressment and blockades lead to the War of 1812. One of the reasons you need to know the word impressment is it's hard to understand the causes of the war if you don't understand the word impressment. They are taking our sailors, forcing our sailors to be in their navy. We don't like that. We're going to have a war about it. So in the War of 1812, there are three major events, just three major things we focus on that happened. One, the burning of Washington, D.C. Two, the Battle of Fort McHenry, which you may not remember as the Battle of Fort McHenry. That's where the Star-Spangled Banner is written. And last is the Battle of New Orleans. So the burning of Washington, D.C., and the Battle of Fort McHenry, where the Star-Spangled Banner is written. That's a pretty important event, the writing of our national anthem. Remember, it's a poem first, and then later it'll get turned into a song. But the writing of our national anthem happens at the Battle of Fort McHenry. Okay. So more about the War of 1812. Just a reminder, you've got the War of 1812. It's caused by impressment and blockades, and it's going to lead to the Industrial Revolution and increased nationalism, increased pride in our nation. We win the war, so we end up feeling pretty good about it. You can also look at it this way. We have the War of 1812. That's going to lead to the Industrial Revolution, okay, where things are easier, faster, cheaper. Easier, faster, cheaper. Okay, so that's all Madison and the War of 1812. So there's not a lot there. Causes, impressment and blockade. Events, burning of Washington, D.C., the Battle of Fort McHenry, where the Star Spangled Banner is written, and the Battle of New Orleans. And then the effect is the Industrial Revolution and the beginning of free enterprise. So let's talk about free enterprise, and then we'll talk about the Industrial Revolution. Because free enterprise is a big effect of the War of 1812. But to understand free enterprise, you actually have to go back a little farther. Because why free enterprise? This is an important question to understand for our test on Tuesday. Why free enterprise? Why did we end up with this system? And I told some of our students at a pullout that we did that you need to think of our economy like living at home. So before the American Revolution, we lived at home, and the British were our bosses. And they told us what we could do, what we could spend our money on, where we could go, what time we had to go to bed, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And then in the American Revolution, we get to move out on our own. Once we move out on our own, we're not going to want to be telling people what to do. We want freedom. That's why we have free enterprise, because we're on our own and we want to be able to do what we want, when we want, sell what we want, buy what we want, all of that. So when you're thinking about free enterprise and why do we have free enterprise? Okay, we had mercantilism and we didn't like it at all. Okay, so we have our American Revolution and that gives us freedom. So when after the War of 1812, when it comes time to develop an economic system, we think we want to base it on freedom, no restrictions. Let's base it on freedom because we didn't like what happened here. So if you're thinking about why do we have free enterprise, it goes all the way back before the American Revolution. We had all these rules and restrictions we had to follow. So when we get the chance to move out and be on our own, then we're going to create free enterprise based on freedom and no restriction. Okay. Okay, Rain, I will, at the end, tell me if I've skipped something that you're confused about. So that was free enterprise. So once again, you have James Madison, War of 1812. It's the causes of the War of 1812 are impressment and blockades. The three major events of the War of 1812 are the burning of Washington, D.C., the Battle of Fort McHenry, where the Star Spangled Banner is written, and the Battle of New Orleans. The effect of the War of 1812 is the Industrial Revolution, an increase in our national pride because we won the war, so we feel pretty good about that. And finally, free enterprise. Why did we pick free enterprise out of all the economic systems? Because way back under mercantilism, we didn't like all the rules and restrictions. So now that we have our freedom, we're going to choose free enterprise. So let's talk about the Industrial Revolution. This is a big one with a lot of information. Overarching idea, big umbrella idea. Ms. Potato, I'm going to go over some of the big ones that you really need to know. Main overarching idea. We have the Industrial Revolution and free enterprise, and stuff is going to get easier, faster, and cheaper. The Industrial Revolution itself, we talk about is the definition is it's the movement from the cottage industry to a factory system. That's what the Industrial Revolution is. So we had that picture up on the board. It'll still be on the board tomorrow. Okay. So before the Industrial Revolution, you've got the cottage system. People are making stuff inside their houses. They can only make a little at a time, and it costs a lot of money. Then, because of the Industrial Revolution, we'll have the factory system. People are making things in factories. It becomes a lot cheaper, and you can make a lot more at one time. Easier, faster, cheaper goods. Industrial Revolution. So, you're going to break the Industrial Revolution into two parts, the North and the South. Okay? Because there's two different things going on. The Industrial Revolution impacts the North and the South in different ways. In the North, this is where you're getting all of your manufacturing happening. Okay. It's because of interchangeable parts, which is introduced by Eli Whitney. I've got that on another page. But interchangeable parts are the reason for the increase in factories. We could not have factories without interchangeable parts. It would not have ever happened because you need to be able to, if one piece of your machine breaks, you need to be able to switch it out really easily. Interchangeable parts means we can mass produce items. So again, interchangeable parts. Without interchangeable parts, we wouldn't have all these factories. Okay. We get interchangeable parts. That leads to the factory system, of which one example is textile mills. A textile mill is a specific type of factory that makes cloth and fabric. So anything that's true of all factories is also true of textile mills. So when we talk about how factories are bad workplaces that are safe and that are unsafe and very dangerous, and people work long hours, that's also true of textile mills. A textile mill is just a fancy name for a specific type of factory. Yes, one of those things being child labor. So we got our sad face down here. The negative things about this is that the we're going to have harsh working conditions, and we are also going to have an increase in urbanization, people moving to the cities. Yes, Mrs. Potato. Eli Whitney invents the entire idea of interchangeable parts, and he invents the cotton gin. Eli Whitney, in some ways, he helps the North because of interchangeable parts, and he helps the South because of the cotton gin. Okay, so he actually helps both parts of the country. So in the South, you're going to have agriculture based primarily on the invention of the cotton gin, also by Eli Whitney. So you see Eli Whitney interchangeable parts, which help manufacturing. That's super important for Tuesday. Interchangeable parts increase manufacturing. And then the cotton gin, which is going to increase our agriculture production. There's also new plows and other devices that are good for planting, but the most important thing is the cotton gin. Now, on the gallery walk, I noticed a lot of people thought that the cotton gin was going to make us have less slaves, which you think, because, well, it makes it easier to pick the seeds out of the cotton. So we need less slaves to do that, right? But because it's easier to pick the seeds out, now I can make more cotton. So instead of only being able to make 2 fields of cotton, because all that seed picking is too much work, now I can make 10 fields of cotton. So the cotton gin is going to increase slavery. So our negative effect here is that it increases slavery. But again, South, agriculture. I'm growing cash crops to make money. Okay. North, I'm working in the factory to make money. Okay. So let's talk about some of these people. I've got like 3 more pages on the Industrial Revolution. It's a lot of information. So you guys are asking about the people. So we'll go through some of that real quick. So we have the invention and the inventor, and I've boiled it down to the 4 most important inventions. Okay, so the 4 most important inventions. Okay, so the cotton gin is an improvement in agriculture. So it's increased agriculture and it's going to increase slavery, and it is invented by Eli Whitney. Interchangeable parts is an improvement in manufacturing. So it's going to increase industrialization and increase urbanization. And I'm going to go over urbanization by itself in just a second. But you need to know that urbanization happens in the North, because the North is where all the factories are. Okay, urbanization does not happen in the South. It happens in the North where all the factories are. So you're going to have increases in industrialization, increases in urbanization, also invented by Eli Whitney. Okay. The steamboat is an improvement in transportation. It is going to increase transportation and trade, and it is going to make it's going to also help build a national economy. So we're going to talk a lot in a minute. I'm going to have a whole section just on transportation and how transportation builds us a national economy. Because the South is doing one different thing and the North is doing one different thing. But the improvements in transportation bring us together as one economy because we can get our stuff from the north to the south with better roads and better railroads and canals and steamboats. So that improvement in transportation brings together um, brings together our national economy. Our national economy. Okay. Okay. And to go, and then we have the telegraph, which is invented by Samuel Morse, and that's going to increase our uh, communication and is going to help out business. And it's going to help out business. Miss Potato, yes. So just remember that the test's like two-step processes. So you need to know Eli Whitney created interchangeable parts, but then you also need to know that the effect of interchangeable parts is more factories because they want you to see Eli Whitney get interchangeable parts and then go to the effect, which is more factories. So it's a two-step question process. Okay, and a lot of the questions on this test are two-step processes. Okay, this person did something. Oh, they invented this. Okay, so what did that invention do? Well, it increased this. Okay, I would not worry about knowing the name of the Claremont. Just know steamboats in general. Robert Fulton steamboats. Okay, so the telegraph, Samuel Morse, that's going to increase in communication, and the more communication we have, that's going to help businesses. So it's going to make business easier to do because you can communicate with all the different parts of your business more easily and communicate with your buyers. Okay, exactly. It's a lot of cause and effect in this test. A lot. You'll notice there's a lot of things with arrows. This causes this. Okay, this is these two things. Timeline. Okay, War of 1812 leads to the Industrial Revolution, makes things faster and easier. Okay, yes. So let's talk about the American system because this is going to lead us into transportation. So we're going to move our focus from the industrial from the inventions. The innovations is another good word for this test. Innovation is just a new idea that somebody has. So we're going to move away from the innovations and talk about specifically transportation for a moment. So Henry Clay, who was the leading war hawk, remember he wanted to have the War of 1812. He's like, let's have the War of 1812 because it'll be good for our country. We'll become better and more powerful. So after we win the War of 1812, he starts to think, how can we unify our country and bring our country together so what the North is doing and what the South are doing are helping each other. We want what the North is doing and what the South is doing to help each other. Not just be the North is doing this and trading with Europe and the South is doing this and trading with Europe. We want the North and the South to be helping each other, not Europe. So he comes up with something called the American system. Okay, and it's Henry Clay comes up with the American system. And his idea is to build a strong, unified America. Those are keywords. Strong, unified America. He's going to build roads, railroads, canals. He's going to help people make new inventions. The government's going to give people money for inventions, and they're going to build a bunch of universities. The three most important ones are the transportation ones, okay? And this is going to unite. It looks like my handwriting is a little hard to read there. That says unite. Unite America's economy. Okay? So the fact that I can ship my goods on a steamboat now means I can get it from the north to the south really fast. And have all these new railroads and roads means I can get my stuff from the east to the west really fast. And the building of the Erie Canal means that I can get stuff from New York City all the way over to the west on this canal, and it's very fast. So faster, cheaper, easier. Faster, cheaper, easier. It's going to unite us together. Okay. And there's one last thing on transportation. And this is the same idea in a different way. So we have the Industrial Revolution. Here's the transportation improvements we're going to make. We're going to have the steamboats, which is Robert Fulton, the Erie Canal. We're going to have the railroads, and we're going to have the National Road. And all of these are going to increase trade, make things easier, faster, cheaper. Okay. They're going to improve transportation. And the bad thing is we're going to be modifying the environment a lot to do all this. a lot to do all this. Okay. Miss Potato, yes, there was a guy who helped who created the first textile mills. Don't worry about his name. You need to know about textile mills. You need to know about textile mills. You need to know what it was like to work in a textile mill, and that a textile mill is just an example of a factory. Okay. Um, that's what I would focus on for the test. Okay. It's very cool information to know how textile mills got from England to America, in that we basically stole the idea and then used it. But for this test, we're going to try and get really focused because there's so much information. Okay, so just really clear on, in order for all these, so all this transportation unites our economy. All this transportation improves trade. All this transportation also requires us modifying the environment. But that's okay, because it's kind of, we cut down all the trees, we dig up all the stuff, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But in the long run, it does all those good things, uniting our economy, improving transportation, make it easier for people to move west. Without the railroads and the roads and the canals, we wouldn't have had westward expansion in the way that we did, because it was so hard to get over there. We made it easier for people to move west. Okay? So we're making it easier for people to move west. But we are modifying the environment to do that. So if you see anything about modifying the environment, that's for transportation. We can't build a road without cutting down the trees. You can't build the canal without digging stuff up. You can't build a railroad without blowing some holes in some mountains. So if you see anything about modifying the environment, that's an improvement in transportation, and that's going to help us increase trade and unite the national economy. Okay. All right. Okay, right. And then last specific thing I want to touch on, the word urbanization. It's not the last thing, but the next thing I want to touch on is urbanization. Okay, so we talked about urbanization is one of the negative effects of manufacturing in the North, right? All these people are moving to the city to go work in the factories. We talk about it as a negative effect, okay? So why did it happen? Well, interchangeable parts happens. So so you got to connect all the pieces of the puzzle. Interchangeable parts means more factories. More factories means more jobs in the city. More jobs in the cities means more people move to the city. Urbanization. Okay. So that's that kind of cause and effect relationship we're talking about. So Eli Whitney invents interchangeable parts. Because he invents interchangeable parts, we get more factories. Because we get more factories, we get urbanization. And we get faster, cheaper, easier goods. Okay, so new inventions, more factory jobs, more people move to the city looking for those jobs. Okay. Yes, many of the railroads are still used today. They've been improved and ripped up and new rail lines placed and all that sort of stuff, but the pathways are all the same. Okay, two more things to talk about. Both from Monroe. So so that was James Madison, War of 1812, its causes and effects, the Industrial Revolution. The causes of the Industrial Revolution is the War of 1812. The effects of the Industrial Revolution are more factories, more agriculture, more slaves, more urbanization, more transportation, a united American economy, a stronger and more unified America. So let's move on to Monroe. So there's two major things from Monroe's presidency that you need to know. It's the only time the South and the North both had growth as the Industrial Revolution. It's one of the only times in history where agriculture and manufacturing both grow simultaneously. Both grow simultaneously. And at that time, it meant the North and the South. So yes, one of the two things you need to know from Monroe is obviously the Monroe Doctrine. It's named after him. It's a pretty big deal. I just drew the picture of, look, there's Europe and Africa. Very bad drawing, sorry. Here's North America and South America and Central America. And we're saying stop, stay out. Okay, so it's our stop sign. And we have two reasons for doing it. We want to protect ourselves, and we want to protect all these new democracies and the independent countries of Latin America, of the North and South America. Okay, so we want to protect ourselves, but we also want to protect Latin America or South America. Okay, so that's the two reasons that we do that. last thing is actually error of good feelings is good to know long term. What's more important is the Supreme Court cases. Okay, the Supreme Court cases. So this makes with two of the Marbury versus Madison we talked about way back during Thomas Jefferson, and we've got two more now: Gibbons v. Ogden and McCulloch v. Maryland. Yes, that's Rain and Miss Potato. That's exactly. Stay off our street. We're going to protect our whole street, not just ourselves. Okay, so you do need to know these court cases. Okay, you need to know that Gibbons v. Ogden, we call it go and trade. It's about trade, and it says only the federal government can regulate interstate trade. So only the federal government can regulate interstate trade. And then McCulloch versus Maryland is McMoney. And what it's saying is states cannot tax federal institutions, entities, buildings. Those are all kind of the same thing. So states cannot tax. Like money is about taxes and bank. Okay, taxing. They wanted to tax the bank. That's the story. Is they wanted to tax the bank. And it says you cannot tax states. Cannot tax federal institutions or entities. Okay, sometimes they use the word institution, sometimes they use the word entity. Okay. Yeah, right. Like I did that. We had that whole thing where I brought people up to the front of the class and they acted out sort of the story of what was happening. All right. So, and they had a bank and they wanted to tax the bank, and the bank was like, no. So they put him in jail, and they got it out of jail because of the decision. So once again, it's Gibbons v. Ogden, go and trade. Gibbons, Ogden, G-O, go and trade. Okay. And McCulloch versus Maryland is McMoney. And then obviously Marbury and Madison's judicial review, that's old news. And then all three have the same effect. All three have the same effect. They are going to increase the power of the federal government because they're all John Marshall. All these court cases are Chief Justice John Marshall, okay? And he's a federalist, so he's going to increase the power of the federal government. All right. I highly recommend, if these are confusing to you, this is definitely something that you kind of want to turn into a little quick study moment. Okay, Gibbons v. Ogden, go and trade. Only the federal government can regulate interstate trade. We talked about like I-10, I-45, that means interstate. Only the federal government can regulate interstate trade. And then McCulloch v. Maryland, McMoney, that's they were trying to tax the bank. We said states cannot tax federal institutions. All right, so we've covered all the main points. I will highly recommend that watch the first, we're at 28 minutes and 45 seconds right now. Watch the first 28 minutes. Like you watched it now. If you didn't watch the whole thing, go back, watch the whole thing. Watch the whole thing again tomorrow night. So you're refreshing your memory each night, okay? Don't try and watch it 4 times tomorrow night and that's it, okay? So try to spread it out. 20 minutes of work, you take an hour or two break, 20 minutes of work, hour or two break. You want to break it up, give your brain space in between. Because remember, in order to remember something, you memorize it, and then it has to sit for a while, and then you have to remember it. You have to retrieve it. You have to go back and get it again. If you do it all at one time, your brain had no opportunity to remember it, to go back and retrieve it. So when you're sitting on your test, your brain is doing something it's never done before, to go back and retrieve. So if you do some tonight and then try again tomorrow, then your brain has the opportunity to remember information so that when you sit on the test, it's doing the remembering action again for a second time. All right. So questions. Are there any questions I can answer? Test is on Tuesday. Test is on Tuesday. So you've got tonight, and then which is why I did this tonight, so that you wouldn't only have you'd have the thing for tomorrow. Other questions? I'm going to eat some chocolate. I like chocolate. Yes, we do have school tomorrow. You have a day off on Monday, February 17th. That's when your day off is. But tomorrow is February 10th, and you do not have tomorrow off. You have Monday, February 17th off. Okay. All right. I'm going to go ahead and close this out. It was a nice short one. Hopefully, it'll make it a little bit easier for people to watch the entire thing. You went to Monster Jam yesterday, Rain. Congratulations. We had another student, I believe, go to Monster Jam yesterday as well. So kind of fun that a couple of you got to go to that. I spent my whole weekend at the school helping with the play, which was very good. And if you didn't hear me earlier, my children are still acting out scenes from the play downstairs at this very moment. So they really enjoyed it. Y'all have a great night. I will see you tomorrow.